The glass didn't just shatter. It exploded under Arya Vale's elbow, venting a 130 degrees Fahrenheit inferno that smelled of slow-cooking upholstery and dying hope. Inside that black SUV, an FBI agent had been left to bake alive, locked in by the very people who shared his badge. Arya didn't wait for backup that wasn't coming. She dragged his limp, graying body onto the Nevada gravel as her K9, Rex, bared his teeth at a dust cloud on the ridgeline. Before we descend into this desert kill box, subscribe to the channel to join our community of truth seekers. Leave a comment below with the city you are watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. Don't touch that door, Rex. Stay back. Arya Vale's voice was a whip crack in the shimmering Nevada heat, so her hand was already molding to the grip of her sidearm as she surveyed the black SUV idling in the middle of nowhere. The vehicle sat motionless in a 130-degree inferno. Its windows were sealed tight, and it lacked any license plates. Rex, her German shepherd, didn't bark. He scratched once, a deliberate, heavy sound against the glass that signaled a life was slipping away inside. Arya peered through the dark tint, her jaw tightening as she saw a man slumped sideways, his skin the color of wet ash. She checked the dash thermometer of her own truck. It read 130 outside, which meant the interior of that SUV was a pressurized oven. Someone locked him in here to die. Child safety locks engaged from the outside, she muttered, her tactical mind already cataloging the scene. Rex's ears snapped toward the ridge. A dark pickup truck idled for exactly 3 seconds on the horizon before vanishing into a plume of dust. We're being watched, Rex. Watch the ridge. Arya didn't hesitate. She drove her elbow through the passenger window with a grunt of concentrated force. Heat exploded outward, a violent, suffocating wave that felt like opening the gates of hell. She reached inside, her lungs burning, and hauled the man out onto the jagged gravel. He was dead weight, 190 pounds of failing organs and cracked lips. "Who did this to you?" she whispered, her fingers searching for a pulse that was barely a flutter against his gray skin. She saw the glint of metal on his belt, an FBI badge, Agent Daniel Cross, Counterterrorism Division. She poured water over his wrists and neck, her movements clinical and fast. "Daniel, Daniel, can you hear me?" she shouted, some shaking him. His eyelids fluttered, revealing bloodshot, unfocused eyes. They marked me," he rasped, his voice sounding like sandpaper on a rusted radiator. "Already dead. Funerals tomorrow." "Who marked you? Who did this?" Arya demanded, her eyes scanning the empty desert. Daniel coughed, a spray of blood hitting the gravel. "Case file closed. Insurance filed. Boating accident. That's what they said." Arya's stomach dropped. This wasn't an accident. It was an execution with a pre-written cover story. She pulled out her encrypted phone, bypassing local dispatch entirely. "This is Lieutenant Arya Vale, SEAL Team 8. I need immediate, secure extraction," she barked into the receiver. "Federal agent down. Attempted homicide staged as an accident. Black Ridge Quarry Road." "Confirm federal agent," the voice on the other end commanded. "Confirmed. Daniel Cross, counterterrorism. He's supposed to be dead already." Arya replied, her voice cold. The response was chilling. "Stand by, ETA 40 minutes, Vale. Do not engage local authorities." Daniel's hand suddenly gripped her wrist with a desperate, weak strength. "They'll come back. They have to. I'm the evidence." "Evidence of what?" Arya asked, leaning in. Arms routing, defense contracts, $40 million. Task force member. He's dirty, Daniel gasped out. Who? Give me a name. Don't know his real name. Code name Blackwater, Daniel whispered before his head fell back. Rex growled, a low, sustained vibration that made the hair on Arya's neck stand up. The pickup was back, sitting on the ridgeline 800 meters out. They're deciding, Daniel, Arya said, her hand moving back to her weapon. They're deciding whether to finish it now or wait for the heat to do the work. Daniel's laugh was a bitter, rattling sound. They wanted nature to do the work. No bullets, no evidence, just heat stroke. Why are you even here? Daniel asked, his breathing labored. Tracking militia logistics. Rex picked up a scent a mile out and wouldn't let go, Arya replied, never taking her eyes off the ridge. Lucky, Daniel muttered. Not luck, Daniel. Training. The pickup began a slow crawl down the ridge, moving closer. Arya didn't blink. She'd survived Fallujah and Kandahar, and she wasn't about to die in a Nevada quarry. She spoke into her phone again. Command, we have hostiles, armed military-grade weapons. Request air support. The answer was a slap in the face. Negative. An air support will draw attention. Handle it, Lieutenant. You're a SEAL. Arya cursed under her breath as the line went dead. Rex, hunt, she whispered, and the dog vanished like smoke into the rocks. The first sniper shot cracked across the canyon, hitting the SUV frame 2 inches from Arya's head. She didn't flinch. She adjusted her stance, calculating the wind shift from the west. Stay down, Daniel, she roared as the second shot missed by a hair. She moved with a rhythmic, lethal precision, rolling behind the engine block as Rex circled wide. A shooter appeared on the ridge, and Rex launched, 80 pounds of controlled violence hitting the man before he could chamber another round. Arya rose, fired a single controlled trigger press, and the second shooter dropped. She sprinted up the ridge, finding the first shooter pinned under Rex's jaws. Who sent you? Blackwater? She demanded, kneeling on the man's chest. I don't know. Anonymous payment. Dark web, the man screamed. Arya grabbed his phone and a USB drive from his pocket. Rex, release! She moved back to Daniel, her heart finally slowing as a black, unmarked helicopter touched down in a swirl of dust. A commander stepped out, looking at the bodies and then at Arya. You pulled an agent from an active kill box without backup, Vale. I had Rex, sir, she replied, her voice steady. The commander's face was grim as the medics loaded Daniel. If Cross was marked for elimination by federal assets, you just became a target too, Lieutenant. This isn't over. It's just beginning. Arya watched the SUV shrink beneath them as they lifted off, the USB drive heavy in her pocket and the desert heat still burning in her lungs. The helicopter banked hard over the jagged Nevada peaks as Daniel's hand shot out, grabbing Arya's sleeve with a strength that shouldn't have been possible for a dying man. He ripped the oxygen mask aside, his eyes wide and bloodshot, fixed on her with a primal intensity. Lieutenant, the USB drive from the shooter. Don't let them take it, he gasped, his voice barely a rattle over the roar of the rotors. Arya's hand instinctively went to her pocket, her pulse quickening as she realized the stakes had just shifted from a simple rescue to a full-blown conspiracy. Why, Daniel? Who am I protecting it from? She asked, leaning in close so the medic wouldn't hear. Daniel's grip tightened, his knuckles white as he coughed, a fleck of blood hitting the floor. 3 weeks ago, I flagged irregular wire transfers, $40 million in weapon shipments that never arrived, he whispered, his eyes darting toward the cockpit. Arya felt a cold knot form in her stomach. He wasn't talking about foreign terrorists. He was talking about an inside job. Someone inside federal oversight is arming the same networks you were tracking, Arya. It's treason for profit, he said, the words hanging heavy in the pressurized cabin. As the helicopter touched down on the tarmac, the commander was already waiting, flanked by two men in dark suits with federal badges glinting in the sun. Arya's hand moved toward her sidearm, her SEAL training screaming that something was wrong. She didn't like the way they were looking at Daniel. "Easy, Lieutenant. They're internal affairs," the commander said. Yeah, but his own expression was a mask of doubt. One of the agents, a tall man named Torres, stepped forward, his gaze landing on the USB drive Arya was still clutching. "We've been investigating Deputy Director Hale for 6 months. Daniel is our only witness," Torres said, reaching out his hand. Arya didn't hand it over. She looked at Daniel, then at the commander, her instincts flashing a red alert. "If your own deputy director tried to kill him, how do I know who's cleared in your office, Torres?" she demanded, her voice cutting through the noise of the base. The tension broke when a young agent named Lisa Crane burst onto the tarmac, her face a mask of desperation. "They told me he was dead! A boating accident!" she cried, her eyes locked on Daniel's stretcher. Arya studied her, looking for the telltale signs of a lie, but all she saw was a partner who had been lied to. "Hale called me personally, said he cracked under stress." Crane sobbed, but Torres didn't let her get close, ordering the guards to detain her for questioning. "Everyone is a threat until proven otherwise," Torres muttered, turning back to Arya as the medics rushed Daniel toward a secure facility. He pulled out a tablet, his face going pale as he scanned the data they had managed to crack from the shooter's drive. "It's not just Hale, Arya. It's 11 federal agents, 4 contractors, and 2 senators," he whispered, showing her the screen. Arya stared at a name she couldn't identify, a shadow figure at the center of it all. Code name Prophet. "Prophet doesn't leave loose ends, Lieutenant," Torres said, his voice dropping to a lethal whisper. "And right now, you and Rex are the biggest loose ends he has left." The tarmac was still vibrating from the helicopter's wash when the commander's radio crackled with a sound that froze the blood in Arya's veins. The prisoner she had captured in the desert, the only direct link to the mercenaries, was dead. He had bitten down on a cyanide capsule hidden in a false tooth while in military custody, a professional erasure that proved Prophet's reach was long enough to choke the life out of a high-security base. Torres looked at the medical tent where Daniel was being prepped for transport, his face a mask of grim realization. "They know we have the drive, and they know Daniel is breathing. We are officially out of time," he muttered, his hand tightening on his tablet. Arya didn't wait for a formal order. She whistled for Rex, the German shepherd's ears already tracking a rhythm the humans couldn't hear. They moved Daniel to a medical facility buried 3 stories underground, a concrete tomb designed to keep the world out, but the air inside felt heavy with the scent of an impending breach. Daniel was propped up in the hospital bed, his skin still ashen, but his eyes burning with a feverish, desperate clarity as he grabbed Arya's wrist. "The cloud files. I have to access them now before Prophet scrubs the servers," he rasped, his voice cracking with urgency. "Torres has his team on it, Daniel. You need to breathe," Arya countered, but the agent shook his head so violently the IV lines rattled. "They won't crack it. It's triple encrypted with a biometric lock that only I can open," he gasped, his grip like a vice. "Once I say the name of the person running this, choosing everyone in this room becomes a target. Prophet isn't just a criminal. Prophet has federal-level kill authorization," he whispered, sending a shiver of ice down Arya's spine. Before she could press him for the name, the base alarms erupted into a deafening rhythmic wail that signaled a perimeter breach. Torres rushed in, his weapon drawn and his eyes wide. 3 blacked-out vehicles just hit the gate using Justice Department override codes. "They're claiming to be a reinforcement team for Cross," he shouted over the sirens. "It's a fake extraction team. They're here to finish the job and make it look legal," Daniel cried out, struggling to sit up as his legs gave way. Arya slung Daniel's arm over her shoulder, the weight of the man and the mission crushing her frame as they scrambled toward the service elevator. The doors dinned open, and for a split second, Arya thought help had arrived, until she saw Agent Crane standing there with a gun to her head, held by a man in tactical gear who didn't have a name on his uniform. "Stop right there, Lieutenant. Hand over Agent Cross, and nobody else has to die today," the gunman said, his voice as calm and professional as a surgeon's. Arya didn't lower her weapon. Her finger was a hair's breadth from the trigger as she felt Rex coil beside her like a loaded spring. "You shoot the dog, I shoot you. Then your whole operation falls apart because you need us alive for the paperwork," she said, her voice a flat, lethal line of steel. The gunman's eyes flickered, a momentary lapse in his resolve, and that was all the opening Rex needed. The dog launched, not at the man, but at the emergency stop button on the elevator panel, his jaws clamping down with a force that sent the lift into a jarring, sparks-flying halt. Gunfire erupted, the bullets chewing into the concrete inches from Daniel's head as Arya shoved the wheelchair into the stairwell. They began a frantic, bone-jarring climb up the fire escape, 3 stories of metal scaffolding vibrating under the weight of tactical boots closing in from above and below. "Saving me isn't worth dying for, Arya. Leave me!" Daniel shouted, his voice nearly lost to the wind. "I've watched good men bleed out on foreign soil because I couldn't get to them fast enough," Arya roared back, her lungs screaming for oxygen as she hauled him onto the roof. "I didn't save them, but I am damn well saving you. Now shut up and hold on." They hit the vehicle depot in a blur of motion, Arya hot-wiring a military Humvee in 3 seconds flat as the tactical team breached the roof door behind them. She slammed the accelerator, the engine roaring like a caged beast as they crashed through the depot gates and vanished into the pitch-black Nevada night. "Who is Prophet, Daniel? Give me the name," she demanded, her knuckles white on the steering wheel as the headlights of their pursuers flickered in the rearview mirror. Daniel leaned back, his breathing ragged as he clutched the biometric drive to his chest. "Senator Rebecca Marsh, Armed Services Committee. She's been arming the enemy and investigating the fallout for 7 years," he finally confessed. Arya felt the world tilt. They weren't just fighting a corrupt agent anymore. They were fighting the very heart of the government. Through the Humvee's tires screamed as Arya jerked the wheel, plunging the massive vehicle off the asphalt and into the jagged embrace of a dry riverbed, to lose the headlights gaining in the rear view. Senator Rebecca Marsh. She's the architect of every false flag operation on this soil for a decade, Daniel choked out, his hand trembling as he clutched the biometric flash drive. Arya didn't flinch. Her jaw set as she navigated the narrow rock walls, her tactical mind already pivoting toward a decommissioned SEAL training facility 2 hours north. If she's the one writing the legal justifications for our deaths, then we make the evidence public before she can sign the warrant, she declared, her voice a lethal hum of resolve. They reached the bunker, a concrete tombstone rising from the desert where Arya punched in her old unit codes, the lock clicking green with a haunting familiarity. She lowered Daniel into a chair at the communication station, his skin ashen under the flickering fluorescent lights as he pressed his thumb to the reader to begin the upload. We send it everywhere. Congress, the international press, WikiLeaks. She can't kill everyone who sees this, Daniel whispered, his fingers flying across the keys. The screens came alive with a flood of data. $160 million in illegal arms deals and contract kickbacks, proving that the prophet wasn't just a traitor, but a monster feeding on the chaos she created. Suddenly, Rex's ears snapped forward, a low, sustained growl vibrating through his chest as a red laser dot began to sweep across the exterior walls. "They have sniper support. Keep that upload moving, Daniel," Arya barked, grabbing her rifle and moving toward the entry points. The front door exploded inward, a deafening blast followed by the blinding white of flash grenades. Arya fired in controlled rhythmic bursts, her muscle memory taking over as she dropped the first 2 hostiles breaching the threshold. "They're jamming the satellite signal. The upload stopped at 18%. Daniel roared in a panic. Arya rolled behind a server rack, bullets chewing into the concrete inches from her head as she counted her remaining rounds. "Switch to the underground hardline, Daniel, now!" she commanded, firing 3 rounds to suppress the next wave of attackers. "It'll take 40 minutes. We don't have that much time," he cried back. Arya didn't look at him. She just reloaded her last magazine. "Then I'll buy you every second of it. Just don't stop typing." The rear entrance shrieked as a breaching charge tore it open and a bullet grazed Arya's shoulder, a hot, searing pain she ignored as she returned fire. Rex launched himself at a gunman near the door, a blur of fur and teeth that bought Arya the split second she needed to neutralize the threat. Her phone buzzed in her tactical vest. A text from Torres. 10 minutes out, air support inbound, hold position. 10 minutes might as well be 10 hours, she muttered, her breath coming in ragged hitches as she drew fire away from the workstation. "Someone is accessing the files remotely with Senate-level override codes. It's Marsh," Daniel screamed, his eyes fixed on the screen where the data was being corrupted in real time. "I can't block her. She has system admin access." Arya fired her last 3 rounds, through the magazine clicking dry as she lunged toward Daniel's chair. "Trace her, Daniel. If she's in the system, pinpoint her physical location." Daniel's hands blurred over the keys until he gasped. "She's at her private estate in Virginia. I'm sending the coordinates to Torres now." Before the final file could transmit, the screen went black, the connection severed remotely from a world away. "We only got 61% out. The names of the senators and contractors are missing," Daniel cried, his voice breaking as he stared at the dead monitor. Gunfire erupted outside again, but this time it was the heavy, coordinated rhythm of a military tactical unit. The bunker door burst open, and Agent Crane rushed in behind Torres, her face streaked with tears, but her weapon steady. "Senator Marsh is in custody. The FBI took her 20 minutes ago based on the financial data you leaked," Torres announced, his voice echoing in the sudden ringing silence of the bunker. Arya collapsed against the wall, her shoulder throbbing as Rex limped to her side, his head resting heavily on her lap. "She's being charged with 12 counts of first-degree murder and domestic terrorism," Torres added. But Arya was looking at Daniel, who was finally breathing without the weight of a death sentence. The network was collapsing. The prophet was silenced. But as the first rays of desert sun hit the bunker floor, Arya realized the scars of this war would never truly fade. The ringing silence in the bunker was more deafening than the gunfire had been. Arya felt the adrenaline drain from her limbs, leaving behind a cold, bone-deep exhaustion. She looked at her hands, and still stained with the desert grit and the copper tang of blood, and then at Rex, who limped toward her with a quiet, wounded dignity. "We did it, Rex. The prophet is in a cage," she whispered, her voice cracking as she pulled the dog's head into her lap. Torres moved through the server room with the efficiency of a man who had waited years for this moment, his tactical team securing every hard drive and corrupted terminal. "Marsh is already talking. She's trading names for a life sentence instead of the needle," he said, his eyes reflecting the blue glow of the monitors. "She's giving up Deputy Director Hale, the contractors, and at least 2 other senators who thought they were untouchable." Daniel sat frozen at the workstation, seeing his eyes fixed on the black screen where he had nearly died trying to save a country that had tried to cook him alive. "They'll crucify me in the press, won't they, Lieutenant?" he asked, his voice hollow and small. "Whistleblower, traitor, disgruntled employee. They'll use every word but the truth." Arya stood up, her shoulder throbbing in time with her heartbeat as she grabbed his shoulder. "Let them talk, Daniel. You survived 3 days in 130 degrees, and you brought down a shadow government. That's not being broken. That's being the only one with enough strength to stand up when the world went dark." Weeks later, the marble hallways of the federal courthouse felt like a different planet compared to the jagged rocks of the Nevada desert. Arya stood in the back of the observation room, a baseball cap pulled low, it watching through the glass as Daniel faced a committee of 12 senators. She saw his hands tremble as he began to speak, but his voice was a steady, lethal blade of facts. "I was investigated for being passed over for a promotion," they said. "But I was locked in a car to be erased as a witness," Daniel told the committee, his gaze never wavering. Senator Marsh didn't just steal money. She armed domestic terrorists to justify her own power, and she killed 12 of my colleagues to keep it a secret. The room erupted in a chaos of shouted questions and slammed gavels, but Arya only looked at Daniel. He looked up at the glass, and for a split second, his eyes found hers. He knew she was there. He knew that the only reason he was breathing was because a woman and a dog refused to ignore a black SUV in the middle of a wasteland. When the session adjourned, Torres found her in the hallway, his face looking older than it had a month ago. "The system worked, Arya. Marsh is going to a federal supermax for the rest of her life," he said, handing her a classified file. "There's no medal for this, no ceremony. Your name has been scrubbed from the record to keep you safe." "I didn't do it for the record, Torres," Arya replied, whistling for Rex, who sat perfectly alert by the marble pillars. Daniel walked toward them, his steps still a bit slow, but his head held high. "I owe you my life 3 times over, Lieutenant. I'll spend the rest of my career making sure this never happens again," he promised, shaking her hand one last time. Arya watched him walk away with Agent Crane, 2 survivors heading back into a fire they now knew how to fight. She turned toward the exit, the cool Washington breeze hitting her face as she stepped out into the sunset. "We're going back to the desert, Rex. We have real work to do," she whispered. She climbed into a nondescript cab, her phone buzzing with a final confirmation from her unit. She had no headlines, no glory, and no audience. But she had the only thing that mattered in a world of lies. She looked at Rex, whose brown eyes reflected a loyalty that needed no recognition. Doing the right thing doesn't require a witness. It only requires the courage to break the glass when everyone else chooses to look away.